From Nashville's WSM Radio, the original home of the Grand Ole Opry, this is a Coffee, Country, and Cody podcast.
Hey, it's Charlie Matos. November the 15th, 2022 was a really special morning on Coffee, Country, and Cody. Red Steagall would join us in studio. He was getting set to play the Opry on that Tuesday night. It had been a long time since Red had been in studio with us and had played the Opry. Singer, songwriter, actor, TV host, the poet laureate of the state of Texas. Just an incredible, incredible legend. And so many wonderful stories. And at the end of our podcast, make sure you stick around because there was a bonus. At the end of his Opry performance, Larry Gatlin, his fellow Texan, his longtime friend of 50 years, asked him to do a wonderful narration, which I'm going to include as a little bonus for our podcast. It was just extra special. Enjoy our Coffee, Country, and Cody podcast with the great Red Steagall.
And Kelly Sutton, we got a young ranch hand looking to hire out this morning.
Okay.
Can you find him some work?
Oh, we can put him to work. We can definitely put him to work.
Red Steagall on your way to the Grand Ole Opry in just a little bit. And Charlie Matos, you'll be bringing him on.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. What a night it's going to be. Yeah, really terrific.
I'm excited about it. Bill, it's so good to see you.
I'm telling you, man, I'm just sitting here looking into your face and realizing how long it's been since we've seen each other, but how long we've known each other.
A long time.
Yeah.
I still had red hair.
You sure did. Do we have the picture, if Red looks into the monitor, Eric, that Doc Mullins out at the Twin Pines Ranch, Charlie Daniels' place,
Yep.
posted this randomly just a couple of days ago. If we don't have it now, we'll come back to it, but there it is.
There it is.
Oh,
When you said your hair was red, when we
Yeah, so was my beard.
and
Charlie's was dark
yeah, and that's the two of you at the King Ranch.
at the King
Somewhere
Ranch.
in the photo collection of Thurman Doc Mullins, he posted that just again randomly.
And I believe that's a horse called Little Peppy. I know it is. He was a great, great stallion. Great cutting horse.
So, Red Steagall, where are you today for people? Catch us up on what's going on with you.
Well, I'm living outside of Fort Worth. Been there 45 years on this little ranch. And we're about 20 miles west of town.
Is that Weatherford? Are you
between Weatherford and Fort Worth.
Okay.
And I spend most of my time doing my weekly television show on RFD TV. We still have, after 30 years, we're still on the air with Cowboy Corner in 155 markets in 34 states, playing cowboy music and reciting cowboy poetry and listening to people talk about the cowboy way of life. I'm really proud of that. And then I still do a few concerts. I still love to perform. Don't play many dances anymore. But I still I can put together a 10-piece swing band. And we just finished our 31st Cowboy Poetry Gathering and Western Swing Festival in Fort Worth. And we're getting all geared up for next year already. So I keep busy.
Well, tell me about little Russell Steagall, born in Gainesville, Texas, and your family and your background. And
Well, I didn't stay in Gainesville long, about 3 days, I think. My family lived in a little town named Forestburg. And my family's been in Montague County since 1870. And they all went from, both sides of my family moved from Tennessee to Texas.
yeah, because the county seat of Montague County is Bowie, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And so my mother's family, one of them got there in 1856 and the rest of them in about 1870 from Fayetteville, Tennessee, from Lincoln County. And then my daddy's folks came from Rutherford and Warren County, Tennessee, and moved to Grayson County and then into Montague County in 1870. So we've been there a long time, but we got very deep roots in Tennessee.
Were they ranchers when they
Farmers, they were all farmers.
Yeah.
You know, at that time, 75% of our population lived on farms and ranches. That happened until 1938, and then it's exactly the opposite today. Only about 20% of our population lives on farms and ranches, and 1.5% of our population feeds us all.
Wow. That's some sobering statistic there. So the ranches that are still active that people would know when you referenced them on your television show, like the 4 6s, for instance, these are Panhandle, West Texas ranches that are sprawling compared to the acreage that we think of associated with farms and ranches in Tennessee.
Well, 50% of all the cattle raised in the entire United States are raised east of the Mississippi, in acres of less than 100 acres, in herds of less than 80 animals. And over here, in this, with the good rain that you normally have, we can sometimes run 2 head to the acre. Whereas out in West Texas, you might run 1 animal unit per 640 acres. That's the difference. That's why those ranches are so big. They have to be to survive economically. And the other half of the cattle are raised in the West. But there are parts of Texas that are in the hardwood belt, like down around Bryan. I've got a friend who has a pretty good sized ranch in Bryan, but he can run 2 head of cattle per acre per year at 2 animal units. And so that's a big difference. Somebody said one time, the reason we raise such fast racehorses in Texas, they have to graze 35 miles an hour just to eat. And 2 guys are driving down the highway out there between Midland and Odessa, and one of them said, I wonder what the cattle eat here. And the driver said, well, there's one eating right there. Won't you go over the fence and find out? And he said he jumped the fence and came back in a minute. And he said, well, what was she eating? He said, I don't know. She ate it all. So it's a difference in the rainfall. And I like to say that there's 3 things that a cowboy won't turn down. That's a cold rain, a new calf, and a chance to take a picture with a pretty girl.
So when did music and acting and everything come into your life?
Actually, I had polio, and I lost the use of my left arm. And I used a mandolin to get the strength back in my fingers on my left hand. Wow. So then today, my band will tell you that I don't play a guitar, I just beat one. But I hang my thumb on the top of the neck and play open chords. And it's worked pretty good for about 53 years, so I'm not going to complain about it. But I started playing an instrument then, and then when I got to college, I had some friends who were pretty big in the rock and roll business, rockabilly business. It was Buddy Knox and the Rhythm Orchids, and Jimmy Boyne and Don Lanier and I had kind of grown up in the same place. And so I got a degree in animal science and agronomy. Went to work in ag chemistry for 5 years. And then,
did you go to A&M?
No, I went to West Texas State.
That's what I
Which
thought.
is now West Texas A&M. Mm-hmm. Always wanted to be an Aggie, and now R1. changed the name of my college, and I'm proud of that. But then Jimmy started having a lot of luck in Hollywood. Donnie went out there to join him, and they called me and said, we need you out here. We need some help. So I quit my job at Shamrock Oil and Gas Corporation in the ag department and moved to Hollywood.
Wow.
And I stayed out there 8 years, and then I started recording in '69. My first record that went into the top 10 was Party Dolls and Wine. And you mentioned that a while ago, Bill. You and I are the only ones old enough to remember it, but that was over 50 years ago.
Wow.
And then I had a string of 26 records in a row in the charts, traveled all over the world, had an unbelievable career in country music. Never was a major superstar or headliner, but I headlined my own little shows.
You were to me. Absolutely.
And played a lot of rodeos and lots of dances. I love to play dances.
Did you ever hire on as a ranch hand? Didn't those big ranches we talked about? Or maybe seasonal work?
Later on, I always wanted the 4.6s was about 13 miles down the road. I always wanted to ride with the 4.6 Cowboys. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know that later on I would ride with them in the spring works for about 29 out of 30 years out at Guthrie. But I've never been hired on as a cowboy.
Yeah.
But I've always loved the lifestyle, the heritage, traditions, and set of values that the agrarian society lives by are the things that are important to me. And I loved Love to get out there on those long trots in the morning and watch the prairie come alive, watch the animals, and listen to those calves bawling and cows bawling as they come down out of the canyons into the roundup area. It's a very spiritual thing for me.
That's Red Steagall on his way to the Grand Ole Opry in just a little while. We're going to do a little dance hall music here, Charlie. We'll get to Party Dolls and Wine, but let's remember Lone Star Beer and Bob Wills music. You can pick Kelly up and dance with her right here if you'd like to. Matter of fact, I'd like to watch.
My yellow rose of Texas packed up and left this morning. I don't know where she's gone, and most of all, I don't know why. I only know I've got the blues.
Red Steagall is here this morning. Couldn't be happier. And on his way to the Grand Ole Opry, which you would have played for the first time when?
Oh, my goodness. About
Early 70s?
in the early 70s, yeah.
What do you remember about that night?
I remember that night extremely well. Charlie Walker introduced me.
Oh, poke salad.
Yes.
Ryman?
San Antonio, Texas.
Ryman Auditorium?
No, it
What,
was
the new
it
house
was in
already?
the new building.
Okay.
And I was playing an Ovation guitar. I was kind of the spokesman for Ovation at the time. And I got up to the microphone, and the end pin slipped out, and the guitar dropped off my chest and hit the floor and bounced back up, and I grabbed it and started playing. Everybody thought it was part of my act. Remember those things were made out of fiberglass, and they'd bounce pretty good. That's what I remember about that night at Grand Ole Opry.
They extended your contract after that, making you look good. Well, and I was just sharing with Red in the break, I said I was looking at just all of the hits that you've had, and the thing that popped out at me, you had a song on a movie called Savannah Smiles, and that is one of the first movies I ever got to see in the theater. My grandmother's name was Savannah, and she took me to see that movie, and his song, I think Pretty Girl, was it Pretty Girl?
Yes.
It was one of the songs on that soundtrack. And I said, man, I vividly remember sitting there and hearing that song in the theater when I was probably 4 or 5, maybe. Yeah, it's just incredible how you've touched so many people's lives in different ways.
I was but about 6 when I did.
That's right. I wouldn't peg you higher than 8.
That was a wonderful movie, and my friend Kenny Sutherland wrote all the songs and did the music, and Mark Miller produced it, and I was there for most of those shots.
Were you?
Mm-hmm. Just hung out with them because I wanted to know how to make a movie. And,
what do you think about the success of Yellowstone in 1882 and this whole resurgence of the modern day cowboy, at least in prime time on television?
I can tell you that the way Western clothes are selling, hats and boots, are out of this world. I'm talking about millions of them. And so they brought back an image of the West. Now, the West, to me, indicates oak wood and leather, not tinsel and plastic. And I think that every once in a while, our country goes back to wanting to touch oak wood and leather. And Yellowstone has given us an opportunity to do that because it's attracted an audience that would never have paid any attention to anything Western. And I've said several times that I think Taylor has done more good for the Western way of life than anybody has in the last 100 years.
That's Taylor Sheridan you're referencing.
Taylor Sheridan. In fact, next Tuesday, a week from today, I'll be at the 4-6's headquarters interviewing him for my television show on RFD TV, somewhere west of Wall Street.
Which I love that title.
Such a good title. And he prominently featured the 4-6's last season, and that's what I was saying, just off screen. It was like to see what he was doing. People that had never even heard of it now are looking it up and realizing its history.
And he's the managing partner in the 4-6's, all 3 ranches. And he's doing a lot of things to merchandise it, like the King Ranch does with their merchandise. So he's developing an identity, and it's working.
Yeah.
And I'm really proud of him. And so I'm anxious to go talk to him again.
Well, I was so anxious to get you in here, and now I don't want you to leave. But we got to wrap up, and we're going to do it with, this song has been done by 2 of my absolute favorite singers of all time, Dean Martin and Red Steagall. And it's where you said this whole thing started for you. Party dolls and wine. But you didn't write it.
No, Joe Bob Barnhill wrote it.
And lives here?
He lives right here in Nashville, Tennessee, and has for probably at least 45 years, maybe longer.
Oh, Red, thanks for coming to see me this morning. We got to run.
I can't tell you how great it is to see all of you. So thank you for allowing me to be here.
And we'll see you on the stage of the Grand Ole Opry in just a few hours. Red Steagall on 650 AM WSM. You're watching all over the world on Circle Television.
Neon lights, barroom bands, motel rooms, and one-night stands. It's party time. You'll find me at the head of the line.
I've kept my heart alive since you've been gone. Lone Star beer and Bob Wills music have kept my heart alive since you've been gone.
Mr. Red Steagall! And I mean the one and only Red Steagall. Woo! Yeah! And the Opry Band. God love you. That wonderful. Hadn't been here. Look, I want my friend to do something. Y'all, I love the real deal, don't you? I'm rooting for everybody, but I love the real deal. And Red Steagall, he, like I mentioned before, is the cowboy poet laureate of the great state of Texas, and has written, I think, is the greatest cowboy poet on our planet right now. I love all of them, but I've asked him if he would do one for us called Born for This Land. Listen to my friend Red Steagall, the poet.
Larry, I'm not paying you near enough money. Thank you. We live in the greatest nation on the face of this earth. We are the luckiest people in the face of this earth because the Lord gave us this land that we call America. And there are certain things that set us apart from people in the rest of the world, but the one that's most important to me is our ability to individually own land, utilize it while we're here, and pass it on to future generations. I believe with all my heart that private ownership of land is the single most important element in the progress and security of a free and independent society. I've kicked up the hidden mesquite roots and rocks from the place where I spread out my bed. And I'm laying here looking at a sky full of stars with my hands folded up beneath my head. And tonight there's a terrible pain in my heart, like a knife it cuts jagged and deep. This evening the windmiller brought me the word that my granddaddy died in his sleep. So I saddled my gray horse and rode out to this hill where when I was a youngster of 9, my grandfather said to me, "Son, this is ours. It's yours, your daddy's, and mine." He said my granddaddy settled here after the war. That new tank's where his house used to be. He wanted to cowboy and live in the West, come to Texas from East Tennessee. And the longhorn were wild as a deer in them breaks. With a long rope, he caught him a few, and with the money he made from trailing them north, he proved up this homestead for you. When the railroad got closer, they built the first fence where the river runs through the east side. Then when I was a button, they built these corrals. And that winter, my granddaddy died. He said my father took over and bought up more range. With purebreds, he improved our stock. And windmills looked like they grew out of the ground. Then that land got as hard as a rock. And during that dust bowl, we barely hung on. The wind tried to blow us away, but it seemed that the Lord took a liking to us. He kept turning up ways we could stay. As my father grew older, he gave me more rain. We had paid for most all of this land, and by the time he went on, I was running more cows, and your daddy was my right-hand man. His eyes got real cloudy, took off in a trot, and I watched as he rode out of sight. And though I was a child, I knew I was special. And I'm feeling that same way tonight, because not many years later, my daddy was killed on a ship in the South China Sea. And for 20-odd years now, we've made this ranch work. 2 cowboys, my granddad and me. And now that he's gone, things are certain to change. I reckon that's how it should be, but 5 generations have called this ranch home, and I promise it won't end with me, because I've got a little one home in a crib when he's old enough that he'll understand. From the top of that hill, I'll show him his ranch, because like me, he was born to this land. We're all born to this land, and it's up to every single one of us all together to keep her safe and secure and healthy for future generations. Take care of our agricultural society. They're our #1 asset. God bless all of you, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
It's a standing ovation for Red Steagall, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Coffee, Country, and Cody podcast. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And please leave us a 5-star review. This podcast was produced through the facilities of WSM Radio in Nashville, Tennessee. The hosts of Coffee, Country, and Cody are Bill Cody, Charlie Matos, and Kelly Sutton. Producer, Eric Markham. WSM General Manager and Director of Content and Programming, J. Patrick Tittle. Copyright 2022, Opry Entertainment Group Holdings, LLC.